words of our Divine Mother from the book The Mother, Question and Answers of 1956, Volume 8, page 94, date 21st March 1956. One child says to the mother, "Sweet mother, here it's written, there is one fundamental perception indispensable towards any integral knowledge. It is to realize the divine in its essential self and truth." This is from the book Synthesis of Yoga of page 106. For this child says to the mother, "How can one understand the divine, sweet mother?" For this, our Divine Mother says, "By becoming Him, my child, and that is the only way, by identity." As Sri Aurobindo says, we know the divine and become the divine because we are that already in our secret nature. It is because He is the very essence of our being that we can become Him and consequently understand Him. Otherwise, it would be quite impossible. Then the child says, "Sweet mother, how can we find the divine within ourselves?" For this, our Divine Mother says, "My child, well, that is precisely what I've just said." What do you mean exactly by what method? First of all, you must begin to seek Him. You must want Him. And then that must be the most important thing in life. The will must be constant, the aspiration constant, the preoccupation constant, and it must be the only thing you truly want. Then you will find Him, the divine. And then our Divine Mother says, but of course, if in one's life one thinks of Him, the divine, for 5 minutes and is busy with other things for 3/4 of an hour, there is not much chances of success. Anyway, it will take many lifetimes. It must not be a pastime. It must be the exclusive preoccupation of one's being, the very reason of one's existence. Is that all? For that the child says, "Tell us something, sweet mother, since we don't have any questions." For that the Divine Mother says, "Why say anything? I can say this, the most precious gifts are given in silence." And then the mother asks them to meditate on the subject. Page 101 in the same book. One child asks the mother, "Sweet mother, how can one increase one's understanding?" For that our Divine Mother says, one's understanding? Well, by increasing one's consciousness, by going beyond the mind, by widening one's consciousness, deepening one's consciousness, by reaching regions beyond the mind. And there is a note here which says, when this talk was first published in 1962, our Divine Mother added the following commentary to the last question about how to increase one's understanding. In that, our Divine Mother says, "I would add one thing now, experience, changing knowledge into experience. And experience will automatically lead you to another experience. But by experience, I mean something quite different from what it is usually taken to mean. It is not to experience what one knows. That is, of course, obvious. But instead of knowing and understanding, even a knowledge much higher than mental knowledge, even a very integral knowledge, it is to become the power which makes that being. Fundamentally, it is to become the tapas of things, the tapas of the universe." And then our Divine Mother says, "It is always said that at the beginning of the manifestation there is Sachidananda, and it is put in this order. First Sat, that is to say pure existence, then Chit, the self-awareness of this existence, and then Ananda, the delight of existence, which makes it continue. But between this Chit and Ananda, there is Tapas, that is to say the self-realizing Chit. And when one becomes this tapas, the tapas of things, one has knowledge which gives the power to change. The tapas of things is what governs this existence in the manifestation. When one is there, one has the feeling of so tremendous a power. It is universal power. It has the feeling, one has the feeling of a total mastery over the universe. Let me read these comments of the Divine Mother again for you. By experience, our Divine Mother says it's something quite different from what it is usually to men. It is not to experience to what one knows, this is quite obvious. Instead of understanding and knowing, even a knowledge much higher than mental knowledge, even a very integral knowledge, it is to become the power which makes that. Fundamentally, it is to become the tapas of things, the tapas of the universe. And then our Divine Mother says it is always said that at the beginning of the manifestation, there is Sachidananda. And it is put in this order. First, Sat, that is to say pure existence. And then Chit, the self-awareness of this existence. And Ananda, the delight of existence, which makes it continue. But between this Chit and Ananda, there is tapas, that is to say, the self-realizing chit. And when one becomes this tapas, the tapas of things, one has the knowledge which gives the power to change. The tapas of things is what governs this existence in the manifestation. When one is there, one has the feeling of so tremendous a power. It is the universal power. One has the feeling of a total mastery over the universe. In page 122 in the same book, one child comes up to the mother and says, "Sweet mother, if one needs something like a mother's affection or some help, how can one feel it in the divine according to one's need?" For this, our Divine Mother says, "What exactly do you want to say?" For that, the child says, if, for example, one wants to know something or one needs guidance or something else, how can one have it from the divine according to one's need? For this, our Divine Mother smiles and says, by asking the divine for it. If you don't ask him, how can you have it? If you turn to the divine and have full trust and ask him, you will get what you need. Not necessarily what you imagine you need, but the true thing you need. You will get it, but you must ask him for it. You must make the experiment sincerely. You must not endeavor to get it by all sorts of external means and then expect the divine to give it to you without even having asked him. Indeed, when you want somebody to give you something, you ask him for that, don't you? And how do you expect the divine to give it to you without having asked for it? In ordinary consciousness, the moment is just the opposite. You assume something saying, I need this relation, I need this affection, I need this knowledge. Well, the divine ought to give it to me. Otherwise, he is not the divine. That is to say, you reverse the problem completely. On page 195, there is a child who comes up to the mother and says, Sweet mother, it is said, follow your soul and not your mind, which leaps at appearances. How to practice this in everyday's life? And then our Divine Mother says, why? What is the problem? What is the difficulty? For this, the child says, how to put this advice into practice, this recommendation to follow one's soul and not the mind, not one's mind. For this, our Divine Mother says, this is purely individual matter. The first condition is, says our Divine Mother, the first condition is to receive inspirations from the soul, exactly what we were just speaking about. For if one does not receive them, how can you follow the soul? How can one follow one's own soul? The first condition is to be a little conscious of one's soul and receive its inspirations. Then, naturally, it goes without saying that one must obey them instead of obeying the reasoning intellect. But how to do it? By what method? This is something purely personal. Each one must find his own method. The principle is there. If one wants to apply it, for each one the method is different. It all depends on the extent to which one is conscious of the inspirations from the soul, on the degree of identifying one, whether one has it or whether one has with it. So, one can't give the same remedy for everybody. And then our Divine Mother is asked the next question. The child comes up and says, Sweet Mother, what should be done to remember the Mother constantly? Should one repeat her name, remember her physical form, or think or feel that she is the Divine? Is gratitude for the Divine a form of remembrance? For that, our Divine Mother says, all this is good, and many other things are good too. It depends on what each one can do. It is a little too personal here again, isn't it? It depends on each one. It is the same thing. If one generalizes, makes no sense any longer. To remember, you must not forget at all. That's it. And then our Divine Mother says, in the page 255, the child says, but Mother, when one prays sincerely for the intervention of the grace, doesn't one expect a particular result for that? The Divine Mother says that depends on the tenor of the prayer. If one simply invokes the grace or the divine and puts oneself in his hands, and one does not expect a particular result. To expect a particular result, one must formulate one's prayer, must ask for something. If you have a great aspiration for the divine grace, evoke it and implore it without asking for anything precise. It is the grace which will choose what will be best for you, not according to your human consciousness, but invoking the grace will precisely and clearly give you an indication of what is to be done, and that will be the greatest blessing than a human intervention. So the divine intervention is always powerful. These are the divine words of our Divine Mother.